Hello everyone, I'm Julian Creates and welcome back to another sew along for my new pattern, Know Me 2113. So with this pattern, I really took inspiration from vintage patterns that I have in my collection actually. So for view A and B, which are the shirts, color block version as well as the single version, this is a shirt that was originally designed by Willie Smith. In a different iteration for McCall's pattern back in the 80s or 90s. So Willie Smith was one of the early black pattern designers that you could buy as a commercial pattern. He was also over kind of a very innovative sportswear brand called Willie Wear. Very neat, very cool. Sadly, he passed away from AIDS back in the early 90s. But I saw his pattern and I'm like, I love that it was different. It also had the collarless neck. It also had the pockets here and the conceal button placket. Only thing I really changed was making it long sleeve and just changing up the silhouette for a more modern interpretation. I'm really excited to share this pattern with you. We'll be making view A today. So we'll be using a single fabric today, and I'm actually going to be using a quilting cotton because I'm just, I'm feeling a little Valentine's Day spirit within me. So go ahead and get your fabric, get everything that you need together, and let's make it together. These are the pieces that you will need. You will need piece 1, which is your right front yoke for the top piece. You will cut one of these out of your fabric. You will need piece 2, which is your right front, one out of fabric. You will need piece 3, which is your yoke left front, one out of fabric. You will need piece 4, which is your left front. You will need one out of fabric. What you will notice is that unlike most other shirts, you will be cutting the fronts separately. So you'll be cutting these in single layers. This allows for the concealed button placket. You'll need piece 5, which is your pocket. You'll need to cut 2 of these. You can cut them out of your main body of your fabric, or you can use like a lining fabric if you're using a print that is like lighter in color. You'll need piece 6, which is your back yoke. You'll cut one of these on the fold. Then you'll have piece 7, which is your back. You'll cut one of these on the fold. Then you have your front facing. You'll cut 2 of these, as well as 2 of interfacing. You have number 9, which is your back facing. You'll cut one out of fabric on the fold, and then you'll interface that piece. You'll cut 2 of your sleeve, which is piece 10. You'll cut 2 of 11, which is your placket piece. And finally, you'll cut 2 out of the fabric of piece 12, which is your cuff, as well as 2 out of the interfacing. So once you have gone ahead and cut your pieces, what I go ahead and do is finish some of the top edges of my pieces with my serger. Meaning that for all of like my front yoke pieces, my back yoke piece, the top edge of my back, and the top edges of my fronts, I go ahead and finish this edge here. Because this is like a single layer of fabric, I like to press my seams out when we start to put the shirt together. So you can go ahead and kind of pre-finish your seams here, or pre-finish the edges of your fabric, so that we can then easily go ahead and start putting the shirt together. All right, so after you've interfaced all your pieces and everything like that, we're going to get started by doing a little bit of prep work and start working on our fronts. So again, remember, I went ahead and finished the bottom edges of my right and left yoke fronts, as well as the top edges of my left and right fronts. Now we're going to start kind of working to put those together. While you have gone ahead and finished the bottom edges of your yoke right and left fronts, you can also go ahead and stay stitch the neckline, which I have done here. So all of this is stay stitched at, I go a little bit less than 5/8 of an inch. So just in case you don't fully catch that in, it just hides in the seam allowance. Now, I've gone ahead and put together one of my fronts already. This is my right front, so that you can kind of get a better feel of what it looks like. So we already have our invisible zipper pocket, as well as our pocket is already in. And this is what it looks like from the back. So I do mine's a little bit different than what the instructions say. So we're going to use our left front, and I'm going to show you what I did. So if you're looking at the actual pattern, what they will have you do now, after you've gone ahead and kind of done your neckline and everything like that here, they will have you place your invisible zipper face down on top of this to sew it on. And then starting to put it together on both pieces. I find that I do better when I put my two pieces together and then just baste my opening in place. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our left front and our left front yoke. We're going to place them right sides together. Matching our notch there, matching our ends. And what we're going to do, as you can see here, I have these two marks here. These marks are basically where my pocket is going to go. All of this is for the placket. So what we're going to do is sew this together at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I'm going to sew here at my regular stitch length of 2.5 all the way to this dot. I will then back stitch at this dot to reinforce. Then I'm changing my stitch length to the largest stitch length that I have, which is, I think, a 5, to act as a basting. And we're going to base from this dot to this dot. Changing back our stitch length to 2.5. We're going to go a little bit further here, back stitch, and continue on at 2.5 millimeter stitch length at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. We are using a straight stitch at 2.5 millimeters for my stitch length, and we're using a 5/8 inch seam allowance. So when I get to my dot, I'm going to reverse my stitches slightly. Now, while I'm here, what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to increase my stitch length. Let me show you why. So as you can see here, I have taking my stitch length all the way up to 5, and till I get to my next dot, I'll be using a 5 millimeter stitch length. Still a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, so now that I'm here at this next dot, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn back down my stitch length to 2.5. going to take 1 or 2 more stitches back up to the dot and then sew that all the way to the end. So now we can go and give this a press. What I normally do is I go ahead and press this open, and then we'll start working on installing the zipper. So like as I said, I went ahead and pressed open my seam allowance. So now from the front, this is what it looks like. And from the back, we have our seam allowances open. I went ahead and moved my marks with my marking tool out this far so I know exactly where my pocket is opening, and this is where it is basted at. So now we're going to focus on putting in our zipper. So we are using an invisible zip. What I've already went ahead and did was I went ahead and pressed the zipper coils. So with a very low iron setting, usually the zipper coils kind of curl backwards. Just by giving it a press, it helps to really even out that tape so that you can get a more of an invisible finish. So with my zipper coils closed, what I'm going to go ahead and do, put this back just like that. Then we're going to lay our zipper front side down. So this side that kind of looks more invisible is the right side or the front side of the zipper. So we're going to lay that down over top of our seams. Now I've already went ahead and also did some marking, so I know exactly where I want this to line up. So with this, I'm making sure that the actual zipper tape opening is right along that seam line, and I am placing a few little pins just to hold everything in place. There we go. So now with that in place, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the zipper, and using an invisible zipper foot, we are going to sew down this top edge to the yoke part of the shirt. So in order to sew on our invisible zipper, we are going to use this, which is our invisible zipper foot. What happens is that through these channels on the back here, that is where your zipper is placed. So, and it rolls along with the actual, the zipper rolls along with the direction of the foot, give you a nice close edge. So we're going to install this, and this top zipper is going to be in this edge right here. And the needle is going to go right down through the middle, and it's going to come right along on the other side of this, giving you a nice install for your zipper. So once you've done the first side, you're going to go around, repin your item so that you can go and sew along the other side of your zipper. So we have our zipper inserted, and I went ahead and just to make sure that my zipper pull is a little bit further into where I'm about to open my basting. And I did that by just kind of pulling the zipper. This edge of the zipper is not connected, so I was able to pull the zipper, pull a little bit inward. But now from this other side, especially where that zipper tape is, I'm using a scalpel style seam ripper, but any seam ripper will work for you. And we're just going to go ahead and open up that basting stitch. You're going to open it all the way up till you get to where you have reinforced your stitches at. And honestly, if you just kind of pull your, like open up your seam a little bit, you can see where those stitches are located. And just take your time to open it up. And then once you give it a good press, you have your zipper. Now, let's go ahead and attach the pocket body. Do that. What I like to do is going from the back again. So this is the front body of the shirt. This is where my pocket is sewn. We are going to attach this right along this edge. Now, you can honestly kind of match up those pieces up top here and then just sew it. There are some notches and stuff like that and some dots to make sure that everything lines up, making sure that you can center these marks here. So making sure that your pocket bag is centered. I'm going to use a zipper foot and just go right along this edge to install what will ultimately be the bottom part of the pocket to the zipper. All right, so I've already went ahead and sewn on the bottom part of my pocket. So this part is already sewn on. So now we're just about to do the same to the top. And again, I am lining up my pocket, what will end up becoming the body of my pocket, the top edge to the top yoke piece of my shirt. And I'm using a regular zipper foot just so that I'm literally dusting it. Now, no, there is a regular seam allowance, but because this is going to be on the inside, you ain't really going to see it. I just put it together, usually using about 1/4 of an inch, especially because these edges are already finished. Taking it right to the edge of where my pocket bag is. So now once I have done sewn on the pocket tops in the bottom to help create the body of the pocket down here, what I'm now going to go ahead and do is, still with my zipper foot on, just going to take it down the front. Again, I'm not using a normal seam allowance because technically everything is already connected into the body of the shirt. And I am going to go ahead when we're done and do a top stitch on the top just to kind of hold the zipper in place. So I'm not really focusing on my seam allowance here, but really just want to sew down on my pocket again. So using about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance because I've already went ahead and finished the edges of my pocket. We're going to do that to both sides. So now that the body of my pocket and everything is together, so all of this is sewn together, before we trim it, what I'm going to do is just do 1 or 2 stitches right at the edge of the zipper here, just to tack everything in place. And then we can start working on trimming off the rest of my zipper and start working on the rest of the shirt. So taking your back piece, go ahead and press in your pleats. And I've gone ahead and pinned them in place. You can also do a line of basting stitches to hold that in place. So once you have done that, we are going to take our back yoke and pin these together, right sides together, matching at the notches. And we're going to sew this at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now here, it's up to you. So as you can see, I finished off both of my pieces already. I like to press my seams open just to go along with the rest of the shirt. one of the ways that you can then do this, actually, as described by the pattern, is to press this up and then to top stitch it. You can also do a flat felt seam if you would like. This is a little bit different than other button-up shirts, as usually there is that inner yoke piece as well as the outer yoke piece. So all of these would be kind of enclosed seams. This is a little bit different, so we're going to do this a little bit differently. So I am going to sew this together and then press my seams open. So now that I've sewn my back to my yoke, making sure that my pleat is in place, again, I decided to press open my seams just so that it can match along with the rest of the shirt. I went ahead and stay stitched my neckline at the top, and now we can attach the front to the back. So the front parts to the back, right sides together at our shoulder seams, making sure we're matching our notches. So from here, what they would also do if you're following the instructions is go ahead and sew down the side seams as well. I like to do my shirts to put in my sleeves flat instead of in the round. So we are going to keep my side seams open for right now. So I've gone ahead and sewn on my fronts and my backs at my shoulder seams. Now, a secret that I do when I'm making shirts and stuff like that, especially even these that will have exposed seams, is if you have a combo machine, such as a cover stitch serger combo, I use a combo stitch. So this is what this looks like. I am using my Burnett B68, and it does a combo stitch, meaning that finishes my edge with a serger stitch. But then you have this row of stitching here. This is a chain stitch used from the cover stitch part of the machine. So I do a combo stitch with this in the center needle and just line this up to make sure I'm still getting 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. So from now on, as I continue with this shirt, I will be using my combo machine to do all the construction stitches, meaning the stitches here, putting in the sleeves, sewing up the side seams and the sleeve seams. But now that we've done that, we're going to start working on our placket. So now we're going to start putting together our plackets so we can start installing our neckline. Again, remember, I have my side seams open right now so I can install my sleeves in flat. But our neckline is done, so we can start focusing on that. To start that, I'm going to start on my right placket. We are going to press in the seam allowance, so 5/8 of an inch. And then we are going to, we're going to press in 5/8 of an inch. Then I have made small notches in my fabric so I know exactly where I'm supposed to be sewing to. So we're going to fold in what will then become the placket, right sides together. So we're going to kind of fold that to the outside, and on top I'm going to pin that in place. Then we're going to baste that on this side. Now, on the left side, that is where we're going to have a very different style of placket so that we can have the concealed button placket. So again, what we're doing is we're going to press in that 5/8 of an inch. Now, if you actually look at the left front pattern piece, you can see we have a outer fold, an inner fold, and then we have another outer fold line, which will become kind of like our outside piece. So what we're going to do is we are going to, so once we have pressed in our seam allowances on this side, 5/8 of an inch, we are going to take it and fold it to that inner fold line. Now, when you do that, what should happen is, and again, I made small notches, both of those outer fold lines should kind of match up. So I'm going to place a pin here, and we'll take this to our sewing machine and we'll baste this edge as well. And while you're at your sewing machine, what you can also go ahead and do is start putting together your facing pieces. So with right sides together, matching up your notches, you want to put your front to your back facing, and then you want to go ahead and edge finish the unnotched edge. So now once you have gone ahead and basted your facings, or what will become your placket in place, I went ahead and started to pin my neck facing right sides together onto the top, matching my notches as well as my shoulder seams. So we're going to sew this all the way around at 5/8 inch seam allowance. All right, so we've gone ahead and sewn on our facing. What we are now going to do is we are going to go ahead and clip the curves here. So this allows for me to easily turn this to the back without the tension that all the curves add. So I went ahead and did my notches and everything like that so I can easily turn it in. But before we do that, what we're going to do is on our left side, where we have that long stretch here, what we're now going to do is fold it in again towards the outside edge on that outer fold. And we're going to stitch that here so that when we turn everything out, we will have our concealed placket already created. So I went ahead and trim that up. So now what we're going to do is just clip these edges on both sides so that we can easily turn them. So now what this looks like is turn that in. And we're going to see that this gives us a finished edge, which this part will be our inner placket where we'll put our buttons, and this is the outside. So there you go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this over to our iron. We're going to give this all a press, making sure that we fully press in all of our plackets. Then, before we go any further, all of the seam allowance at the neck edge is going to be facing the actual placket piece, and we will go ahead and understitch. So now that we have our neck edge understitched, this is what it's starting to look like. Now what we're going to do is do a line of top stitching, kind of setting in our plackets. So as the pattern states, they want you to edge stitch this edge from the inside on both sides of your placket. Now, I know me and I know how my stitches look. I prefer the look of top stitching. So what I'm going to do is we are going to measure out on my sewing machine to make sure that I can just catch that little edge there and do it from the outside on both sides. And this will also make sure and ensure that all of this is kind of laying in place so that when we put both plackets on top of each other, it will look nice and clean. All right, so now this is where this pattern is going to kind of diverge from other patterns that you've done. With most other patterns, what you usually do after this is you start putting on your sleeves and everything like that. And what's included in your finishing is buttonholes. But for this pattern, we're going to do buttonholes now. So on that inner placket piece, so after everything is sewn together, you're going to use the markings on your pattern piece to find where you're supposed to place your buttonholes, and go ahead and put your buttonholes in now. Especially while things are still unhemmed and everything like that, it does make it easier. So we're going to go ahead and put in our buttonholes along our left inner placket. So after completing the buttonholes here, I went ahead and top stitched down the neckline so that it also catches the facing. we did that at 1 inch in. To finalize the neckline, went ahead and put in a buttonhole for when I use a decorative button. Now, while all the other buttons on this shirt will be hidden, except for on the sleeve cups and stuff like that, this one I wanted to just kind of do a slightly larger button because this is the only one that's visible, and I'm using this pink wood-like button. So now that we're done with that, we can put the body of the shirt aside as we start to prep the sleeves. All right, so it's now time to start putting together our sleeve. And before we do that, we're going to have to put on our bottom placket and do our pleats that will go into the cuff. So let me show you how I did that. So to start with, we're going to take our placket piece and we are going to look for our large dot, which is kind of in this leg here. And we are going to sew at 1/4 inch seam allowance, up about 1/2 inch and over about 1/2 inch. And then we are going to cut to that dot. So not going to cut through the stitching, but to it. Once we have done that, we are going to fold down our 1/4 inch seam allowance on our 2 long edges, as well as this short little dog leg in the top here. We will then take our sleeve. And the way that I kind of mark where everything goes on my sleeve is that I have these little triangles here. This is where my pleats are. So I have the start of the pleat as a small little slit going into more of a triangular notch here. This is where I know to pleat my sleeve, and this is my main notch. Now the start of my placket piece, I know where that slit is because I do a longer slit or a longer cut here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our placket piece, put this correctly, we're going to put our placket piece right sides down on the wrong side of the sleeve. And I've already drawn out my box here that I'm going to sew, and I make sure that I am centering that long slit in between there. We're going to pin this, and then we're going to sew around this box where I have marked. So we've gone ahead and sewed around our markings for our box. And now what we're going to do is kind of, you can turn it to this side where I've already made that longer snip. We're going to cut that all the way up. And similarly to how we do a welt pocket, we're going to make that like Y cut going to the line of stitching, but not through it. All right, so I have some small pins here I'm going to take out, and we're going to turn this out. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to press these seam allowances in so that this one side can go right over top of that to make the outside of our placket. And we'll press this side out with the seam allowances in to make the inside part of our placket. We will then top stitch this down right along this edge. And on this side, we will top stitch this down along this edge around to make sure that we're connecting that box. So now that we've gone ahead and top stitched all of our edges down, we've also gone ahead and finished our box, making sure that we have encased everything in the back. So this is all encased. Now, what you can go ahead and do is you're going to put in your buttonhole. Now, note, this might be a harder buttonhole to put in, just due to there not being any interfacing in this piece. One of the ways that I like to do that is by using a piece of tearaway interfacing. If you do not have a piece of standard tearaway, a piece of recycled newsprint, or this is a piece from a magazine that I always keep in my sewing space so that I can use this behind here just to make sure that we are feeding correctly as we're doing our buttonhole. Once we have done that, we're going to go ahead and do our pleats here that are going towards the placket. So we're going to press these in place and then baste them after we do our buttonhole. Then we can start working on installing our sleeves flat. So now to start installing our sleeve into our shirt, what I went ahead and did was matched up all of my notches as well as the dots that are on my pattern. And the way that I mark those or denote those is by just doing small little clips throughout. So I know exactly where like the top of my sleeve head is. It's not exactly on the shoulder seam. It's a little bit over. This one over here, this one here. And then we also have, of course, the front of my sleeve. So I do this as it allows me to ease in as I go because that is my preferred method. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to take this actually to my serger and we're going to use a combo stitch to install this. You ain't in no rush. So choosing which works best for you. Now, if you don't feel confident with this, you can always go ahead and ease this in, base it in place, or just use a regular sewing machine and then deciding to finish your seam allowances. It's all up to you. Just after doing this a few many times and through my love of a good button-up shirt, this is now my preferred method of putting them together. And if you have a knee lift, it also helps in making sure that your seams can stay flat. You can lift up your presser foot just to make sure everything is in place correctly. And I have made these little marks over here, so I know my seam allowances. So I am marking, riding right along this edge. Making sure like my pocket and everything is staying out the way. So after the sleeves, I went ahead, did my sleeves, pressing the seam allowances towards the sleeve itself. I then in one fell swoop, did the side seams as well as the sleeve seam, putting it all together. And again, did it on my serger, allowing with a combo stitch, allowing for a finished edge, along with a chain stitch, which acts as my regular straight stitch for construction. So from the outside, of course, it looks like your regular stitch. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we're pressing our seam allowances towards the back. So all the seam allowances towards the back panel, and then we'll start working on our cuffs. All right, so now it's time to install the final piece of the shirt, which is the cuff. So I've already done one here, all finished up. So to get us started, we're going to take our pattern piece for the cuff, and we're going to fold in the seam allowance on the unnotched edge and give that a press. Once we have done that, what we're going to do And I'm doing mine a little bit different than what you are used to probably seeing. So instead of attaching it right sides together so that we are stalling the outside and then attaching and then like edge stitching to do it on the inside, I like to do it the opposite. So I put my sleeve in right side of the cuff to the wrong side of the sleeve, matching up my notches and stretching this around. Once we do that and press the seam allowance up towards the actual what will be the cuff when we fold it out, I'll show you what it looks like. I went ahead and sewed on this cuff towards to the inside of it. So basically it will leave for a clean inside on the inside, or a clean finish on the inside of my cuff. Then what we're going to do is we're going to fold the cuff, and we already have the seam allowances already matched where they're both kind of already been pressed. And we're going to go ahead and sew this edge down at 5/8 of an inch so that we can then turn it out. Once we do turn that out, we will go ahead and do a line of stitching. I did about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge as a top stitch, holding the front in place and giving a nice line of top stitching. If you wanted to, you can go ahead and top stitch all the way around this cuff. But once the cuffs are done, you will go ahead and put in your buttonholes, add the buttons to the whole entire shirt, finish the hem, and you have a done shirt.